Helping Seniors Television, all about improving quality of life for seniors. If you're a senior, know a senior, or plan to be a senior, then this show is for you. It's all about helping you develop your own aging plan so you can age actively and with dignity. Helping Seniors Television from the Helping Seniors Network of information, education, and resources.
I'm Kerry Fink. Welcome to Helping Seniors of Brevard Television. You know, we're a nonprofit here exclusively to Brevard County, Florida. We call it the Space Coast. If you live here, you know it's a great place to live. If you're new here, welcome to Florida. Lots of people are coming to Florida. It's a great place to be. But one of the things that we always want to do in the Helping Seniors world, because the population in our county, Brevard County, Florida, is 1/4 over the age of 65. So out of every 4 people you walk down the street, you might as well say, hello, senior, how are you? And if you know anything about AARP, they will send you a card at age 50, whether that insults you or not, they're going to call you a senior. And if you want to go by that metric in Brevard County, 1 in 2 of us is over the age of 50. So in the Helping Seniors world, we are all about equipping seniors, their families, and their friends and loved ones with the best information to make what our president and founder, Joe Steckler, calls an aging plan. That's where we want you to be able to gain information that will enable your golden years to be as good as they can be, and to help you make sure that as we age, we could run into some things. We want to be sure that we're prepared for them. In Florida, we get hurricane plan, which means you don't want the hurricane, you just want to be ready for it. So with an aging plan, we're just talking about the things that you might run up onto as the trips around the sun continue. So let's learn today about a very important benefit. At Helping Seniors of Brevard, we have operated the County Senior Information Line for getting pretty close to a decade and a half now. It's a free call in Brevard County, 321-473-7770. I'm going to say that one more time, 321-473-7770. And we took in the past year, we've taken over 5,450 calls from seniors, their families, and relatives who care, and loved ones, and sometimes just neighbors down the street who are concerned and want to make sure everything's going well. And one of the things that we gain from these calls is an understanding that people need help out there because they're running up on stuff for the first time. We say aging is on-the-job training, and you run into times when you might need a little extra help. And oftentimes the help is available, but the money may not be available. And that's why this program is going to be so important, because if you or someone you're married to has served in the military, you need to pay attention to this conversation we're going to have about VA aid and attendance benefits. And I'm so fortunate to have with us today our special guest, none other than Katie Jackson-Stolz, who is a Martin Hubble Platinum attorney, rated. That's rating. So that's how, I guess it has to do with how people found their interaction to be with them, with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you for having me, Kerry.
You're an elder law attorney, so you do this day in and day out. But I got to tell you, when I gave that phone number for the Helping Seniors info line, you know, we get calls from widows who are really stressed out because their husband passed away, their wife passed away. They don't know how they're going to make it on basically half the income. They've got all kinds of challenges. And I am surprised how often one of the little check boxes that the folks, Nancy and Karen on our Helping Seniors line, will try to go through is, did either one of you serve in the military? And then as the conversation unfolds, the answer is yes. And then they ask, are you aware of VA aid and attendance? And they're like, no, what's that? And so for somebody who's been struggling along on a Social Security check, and that's all they have in the world, to find out that some extra help could be available is like manna from heaven almost. And I guess the question is, people don't know what VA aid and attendance benefit is. And even if they think it's something, they say, oh, I have to be in service in a certain way for this to qualify. So there's all these nuances of this. Let's kind of rewind and take it from the top. What is a VA aid and attendance benefit?
Yeah, so VA aid and attendance, it's really a pension benefit with an aid and attendance add-on, but it's a tax-free benefit that veterans or their surviving spouses may be eligible for.
Yeah. And so this is money that could come in at a time that is so desperately needed because it might be part of an answer to how do I afford the assisted living, or how do I get that extra help at home that I might be needing as I'm aging. And this is a benefit that if you served in the military, or you're, I guess, correct me if I'm saying this right, but if you're married to somebody who served in the military, you might very well be qualified for.
Absolutely. So I do a lot of applications for the surviving spouses of wartime veterans.
And this is a question: to be considered eligible for VA benefits, aid and attendance, the person has to have served, I know, just enough to be dangerous during, quote, wartime. So what I would first think is, well, I served in a person served in Afghanistan, or if they served on a dangerous place, that qualifies. But I think it goes broader than that.
Yep. So it's during a covered wartime period. And so there are dates that are defined that you can find. And you don't need to have been boots on the ground in Vietnam, for example, or in Korea, for example. You just need to have served 90 days active duty consecutive, with at least one of those days during a covered wartime period.
Wow. So even if you were on the home front doing your service here in our country, but it happened to coincide with a time that was on that table of dates, you still would qualify.
Absolutely. So we would just look at your DD-214 or your discharge paperwork, and you see that entry date into active duty and the release date to inactive duty. You look at those days, that window, and you compare them to the covered wartime period. And if you're in, you're in. It doesn't matter if you were in America or overseas.
So if that became a benefit that you would check that first rung and you say, wow, I did check that box, what is the benefit itself? So it's a monthly amount that you could receive in addition to your Social Security or something like that?
Yep. So the numbers get set each year. So they just went up for 2024. Mm-hmm. So I believe a single veteran is around $2,300 a month. I believe a surviving spouse is between $1,400 to $1,500 per month. And so it's a benefit. And once you get approved, it just starts paying into your account, direct deposit every month.
So I guess a question that comes up about when we talk about the aid and attendance benefit, I understand one of the check mark boxes that you have to get through is you have to find out, do my dates of service qualify in one of those windows? And I think it's really encouraging to know that the standard for how you would qualify is really pretty simple based on the dates. It seems real easy to check it and find out. But I guess the next question is, what, as a person applying for this benefit, do you have to demonstrate a need or anything like that? Or how does that part of this work?
So it would be help with activities of daily living. Okay. So help with 2 activities of daily living. Or you could need a custodial care or a protective environment. So if you're not getting help, or you don't necessarily need help with 2 activities of daily living, but you need help with a protective environment, maybe you have Alzheimer's or dementia, but your body's still great, you're still functioning well, you don't need help with the ADLs, but maybe you need a protective environment. So there's 2 kind of different ways to qualify on the medical needs side of the pension test.
So if that's the case, then too, is that probably why, in my limited experience of watching this flow through the Helping Seniors call line, where people are genuinely surprised that there's this benefit and they didn't know it was possible help. But then it makes somebody possibly be able to get a level of care at home that they otherwise would simply not be able to afford.
Absolutely. So they do call this benefit a hidden gem because so few people know about it. And I love this benefit, and I love it for the example you just said, where there's somebody and with their income, it's not quite enough to get them to move to assisted living.
Right.
But once they know that this benefit will be coming in, they feel confident now in that transition, in that move, and it lets them get to the assisted living facility.
And not only that, I guess another part of it is, again, depending on where you're starting with your income, a lot of the calls we get are literally from people who literally are working with Social Security income, and that's about what they're working with. So if you were able to pull this benefit, you really improved your ability to get the help you needed, the place you needed. So I wanted to ask this question, though. Anytime you go to the government for any kind of assistance, it's usually forms and forms and forms and forms. And I know just enough about this to be dangerous because I've understood that you do have to be careful how you put your form together, and also that there are rules where they go, because I assume there's levels like you can't have too many assets or too much income, and then they say, well, maybe you're okay without this benefit. Talk a little bit about what's required to qualify. We've got the date. We're pretty good on that. We understand that we really could use the extra help. Now, how do we prove that we're qualified for that?
Yeah, and so there's a lot of forms, and the forms are confusing. There's different ways you have to do it. And so just backing up a step, whenever you are going to submit an application, you're also not necessarily going to hear from the VA for many, many months. So you won't find out that you even made a mistake, which may have rendered you ineligible for many, many months until you'd have to start it again. So there's big penalties in VA in terms of missing out on money because it's not quick. There's a lot of applications in there. And so you're going to have at least a 4-month or longer lag time. So it's really important that the forms are done correctly. And unfortunately, they aren't that easy. They're not that simple. So experience really makes them easier to fill out. But when we get to the requirements to qualify for the benefit, one of them is that covered wartime period. So 90 days active duty with at least 1 day during these set wartime periods. With that, you're in or you're out. You're eligible for the pension with the aid and attendance add-on, or you are not. And unfortunately, we've had people who were 2 days away. Once you hit that box, that's kind of the first step in your analysis. Then you're going to see if they have the medical need. So the medical need, like we talked about, the help with 2 activities of daily living, or the need for custodial care in a protective environment. That's shown by way of a doctor form, which it's a VA form that your doctor fills out. Often they'll fill them out based off your last visit, or it can be a nurse practitioner. And then there's an income test and an asset test. So the asset test, the current 2024 numbers, you need to have less than $155,000, but not all of your assets are counted. And then on the income test, it's kind of tricky. That's the part that I see messed up on applications that someone may do themselves the most, because the VA has their own way of calculating income. So I call it IVAP, which is income for VA purposes. So it's a 4-part test. You need the dates of service, medical need, assets under the net worth limit, and you've got to meet the income test or have the right IVAP.
Yeah, and there's a part that I want to get into, which applies also because I know you're an expert on just public benefits. In fact, there is a great show in the Helping Seniors TV library, Katie, that you were kind enough to share your expertise on, called the Top 3 Public Benefit Questions that you encounter at the law office. And this has to do with Medicaid planning, but it also has to do with VA planning, because a lot of times we don't understand all these fine rules. And there's something that's very, very important to understand called a look-back period, I guess, when it comes to when you're trying to, they say you can only have this many assets. So you're like, fine, I'll just give the house to my son because that's where it's going to go anyway. But then it creates all kinds of problems because it becomes part of that look-back period.
So the look-back period is very important. So the VA created a look-back period some years ago, and for VA, it's a 3-month or 36-month, 3-year look-back period. So you don't want to have been giving away any assets during that time. So sometimes when I ask, has there been any gifting? And in fact, on the application, there is a question, have you, gifted any assets or transferred any assets for less than fair market value in the last 3 years? That has to be no, or else you'll be penalized. So they will penalize you from getting the benefit based off how much money you gifted. And so usually when you think, did you gift, people only, it pops right up money, right? Did I give you $10,000? But there's other ways you need to be careful. Changing the title of your car. Yeah. You're not driving anymore, so you transfer title to your son. That was a gift if son didn't pay you fair market value. Yeah. So there's different things. And whenever we're working with a veteran or their spouse of a veteran, there's so many layers we're looking at. So we're not just looking at, do they qualify for the VA aid and attendance, the pension benefit, which of course I'm really focused on that because I want to get them money and the support they need. But I want to make sure that if they ever were to need Medicaid in the future, or, their estate plan. Do they have a good foundation for the estate plan? So I really want to look at and come up with an aging plan for now until end of life and make sure they've got everything lined up.
This part of it is so important. And I was thinking that the kind of a corollary to this, we always use this thing in the helping seniors get your ducks in a row world, where we say, don't try this on your own. And I guess there's a great temptation to try to maybe take these forms and go, oh, they're the government forms, I'll just get them and fill them out myself. Or I guess people well-meaning will go to somebody they know at a military base and say, well, this person's probably done it. They can help me fill out the form and it's not going to cost me anything. But it can really get costly, because if it gets bungled, you really hurt yourself both in terms of time, money, and maybe even the ability to get the benefit, right?
Right. So there's no cost to submit a VA application. And I'm sure there are really good VSOs and individuals who really know what they're doing when they fill out the VA forms. And some people might be so savvy that they can fill them out themselves, even though they are really complicated forms. But often when you do them yourself, it's just a higher likelihood of making a mistake or filling in maybe a yearly amount instead of a monthly amount for an income source, little things like that. And so I have fixed appealed multiple applications that someone did themselves, or they went somewhere and someone helped them. So not to say there aren't great individuals out there that can help you, but I do think I've fixed a lot of them, and they're hard to do. They're not that easy, the forms. So a lot of attorneys don't even offer VA. They do estate planning and they do probate and they do other stuff, but they don't touch VA because it's difficult.
Well, I was thinking not only that, the seems like the challenge when you're trying to do these forms yourself, or maybe with the help of somebody who's well-meaning. I was smiling when we were talking about, there probably are people out there who can do this. Yeah. But it's a little bit like going to Vegas. This is, you're betting on the odds that hopefully I got somebody who really knows what they're doing. Whereas opposed to, and this is something we've talked about in previous television shows we've done together, where we say, most of us, when we're doing some of these things related to elder law, and I call this part of elder law, is these are like once or twice in our lifetime kind of things. So, that old adage, practice makes perfect. And so if I have to do a VA form, this is going to be the only time in my life, probably, if I did it right, then I'm going to do it right. But you guys are doing these, like helping lots and lots of veterans and their spouses. So you understand the questions are being asked. You know what the VA is looking for so that it's correct from their side. You understand all these nuances of look-back periods. And I made this comment once. I said, it really, you have to be able to think in multiple dimensions, because some of this stuff is not easy. Well, I heard this from Amy Van Fossen, again, talking with Katie Jackson-Stolz of the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen. So talking with Amy Van Fossen herself, she's talking about how people will look at these forms and they will make decisions, but without having the experience of having done this a few times. And so it seems like it's just ripe for a problem, or get somebody who knows half knowledge can be worse than no knowledge, instead of sitting down with somebody who really does this day in, day out. And I remember one of the examples she gave is somebody said, well, I just put my kid on my bank account. Ooh. And so without, totally innocent, because they wanted that person to be able to write checks if they were in the hospital, or make sure the rent's paid or whatever was going on, but didn't understand in doing that now that became a gift, and it caused all these ripple effects downstream. Absolutely. And there's so much legal advice out there, and I'm sure most of it is good intended, but there's a lot of wrong legal advice. So, elder law attorneys specialize in that. We are in communities with other lawyers that just do what we do. We love what we do. So if the forms get updated, or there's a new law, or a different attorney in a different area of the state said, I had this surprise problem happen. Right. We love knowing that and being as up to date as we can. So someone who isn't, breathing that 40 hours a week or however many hours a week, even if they're good intended and they say, add your kid to the bank account, they'll avoid probate, or add your kid to your deed, which is the worst thing. Yeah. You'll avoid probate. There's so many other issues that can happen because there's so many layers to an aging plan. So even if I'm just, trying to get the veterans situated and get them this money,
I'm looking at all these different levels and just trying to take care of them from now until the end.
Yeah, and so we've even had the conversation that you guys have been called in many times, not necessarily specifically on VA, but maybe. But oftentimes you'll get called in. Somebody went to a family attorney. Maybe it was a divorce attorney. Maybe it was just somebody, who helped them with a real estate deal or something like that. And they said, oh, sure, I can write all this stuff. But then the problem with this stuff is when you need it to perform properly and it doesn't, sometimes it's a you just can't do the whole thing over. There's just no opportunity to. But I assume even if the VA, if you flub it the first time, I heard you talk about you help people with appeals and maybe try to get it on the right track.
Yep. So if you submit an application to the VA, you're going to have to wait many, many months until you get a response, but they can deny you. And then at that point, you would have to appeal. So whether you were eligible, but you just didn't fill out the forms right, or your supporting documentation wasn't clear. So whenever I do an application, you have supporting documentation backing up everything in there. So if I say a bank account has $12 in it, I'm going to have the bank statement that shows the $12. Right. So I try to put it all together really nicely so that whatever processor receives it, it's like a nice package. Yeah. It's all connected. There's no questions they could possibly ask for an appeal. Right. And so that's a big kind of part of it for how to get them through is, try to tie them up real nice for whoever receives it.
Well, but see, that's the value once again. What's the value of experience in this case is because what's the old expression? This isn't your first rodeo. You have done this over years and specialized it. One of the things I wanted to ask you, if somebody says, look, I want to learn more about this, see if maybe I'm eligible. One of the things that I think is so valuable about what you guys do is you always take the time to do a lot of seminars in the community. You guys are very generous with your time to help educate people. And I often scratch my head and go, why do we not generally take more advantage of this to get the expert help you need at the right time, or at least begin that first step? Like, let me educate myself a little better. See, maybe if I do qualify for this. I know that you guys are really good about having a number of different kind of seminars and workshops where you'll lead people through like the top layer stuff, so you get them to place. And what a great way to invest somebody's time, because you're giving them the basic skills they need to know, so that at least when we come in and sit down with you individually, we know the right questions to ask. How does somebody learn about that? Do you guys do VA aid and attendance seminars?
We do. So we do estate planning seminars, VA seminars, and Medicaid seminars.
Okay. And so what's a good way to kind of like get a schedule or find out like what's available and how they would access it?
So you can call the office at 321-345-5945 and just say, I heard you guys have free seminars. What's the calendar? What's the schedule like? Can I please get on the calendar? And when you go to a seminar, you also get a free consultation afterwards. So for VA, for example, you could go to a seminar, learn all about the benefit, and then afterwards go ahead and schedule a consultation with somebody to really dive deeper into your case and your specifics.
I think that's, wisdom is knowing what you don't know a lot of times and being willing to ask for help in the right places. And just as you were talking about it, I was thinking about how often we'll Google something or think we're helping ourselves by doing an internet search. And I don't know if you've ever done this. It certainly happened to me. Like, I'll look something up online and end up more confused about the topic than when I started, because, first of all, the first maxim of the internet, if it's on the internet, it must be true, right? And then the second part is, in so many of these cases, maybe less so with VA, but in a lot of the things that you guys work with, I understand that there are great differences from state to state. So you may have done some of your estate planning or something based where you lived in, the Northeast or the Midwest, and then you decide to come down to the Sunshine State and retire. But it's not necessarily a guarantee that everything you had done up there works the way you intended for it down here, which is another reason to take part of a seminar and learn. I know I've been around you long enough to also get an insight that there are Florida's not a bad state to retire in, because there are a lot of protections that help us as well. I'm thinking about in particular like homestead extension, homestead protections and things like that. So these are all the reasons why you've got to take advantage. And it seems like step one is educate yourself, find that seminar that makes sense for you. Then number two, if they're going to give you an opportunity to sit down with the attorney and not charge you to kind of like get a sense of where you're at and what might need to be done, why would you not take those steps? And then you can always say, okay, I'm not ready to do this at this minute. I'm going to come back a few months from now. But what would keep you from just going ahead and making a step forward on all this? I'm sure as you've helped families put together these applications and things, and it works its way through the process successfully, if people must be like, wow, I should have started this before, or I should have called you guys a long time ago. I mean, I'm sure you hear that all the time.
Absolutely. And, there's times that I'll do a consultation with somebody and there'll be the notes for what they have said they want to talk about and what they think they need. But once we get in the consultation and I really deep dive, I realize, no, you actually need this whole other thing. Yeah. So you don't know until you get there because you're just not, doing it all day long. But I do love the benefit. Yesterday, I had one of the daughters of a veteran call me and say, the money came in. So usually it pays into the bank account before the letter even comes from the VA, because you put the direct deposit information right on the. So those are always exciting when someone says, Dad's money came in or my money came in. So it really is one of my favorite things about elder law is the VA pension aid and attendance benefit.
Helping people. Katie Jackson-Stolz, elder law attorney with the law office of Amy B. Van Fossen. Always good to sit and talk with you. And I learn something every time we sit down and talk. I think if you've been anywhere near military service or your spouse has, you want to check this benefit out for yourself. So be sure you do. Thanks for joining us today for Helping Seniors Television. And we will see you next time as we continue. There's a great library of information, helpingseniors.brevard.org. Find us on our YouTube channel or find us on our Facebook page. But let's be all about helping seniors.
I'm Joe Steckler. Thank you for joining our program today. I'd like to remind you that our senior information line is available to you at 321-473-7770. There you can get help and direction that could be helpful for your specific situation or circumstances. The work of helping seniors is very important, but we can't do it alone. That is why our sponsors here in Brevard County are so important. I'd like to thank our many area sponsors, businesses, and medical providers who support the mission of helping seniors that help us carry the cost of our media efforts. If you'd like to join us either as a business partner or simply donate as an individual, we welcome your call at 321-473-7770. You are always welcome to visit our website at www.helpingseniors.brevard.org. Thanks so much for your help. It does make a difference.